Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today, by popular demand, we are going to review every single studio album from Polish black metal, death metal, heavy metal icons, Behemoth. Been wanting to do this for a bit because I really fucking like Behemoth. They're probably one of my favorite extreme metal bands out there. Right now feels like the perfect time because they've got a brand new album, Ops Natrum Contra, whatever the fuck it's called. As per the norm with every video of this type, I am only interested in studio albums. I am not interested in EPs, demos, live albums, or compilations, nor am I interested in any albums released by any solo or side projects. I will be reviewing every single album in order of release, assigning each a score out of 5, and I should note, for the purposes of today's video, I will not be talking about Ops Contra Natrum. I literally just talked about it on this channel a couple of days ago. I've already done a full album review. I don't really feel the need to repeat myself. If you would rather go watch that, then go do so. With that out of the way, let's get into it and let's review every single Behemoth album, except the aforementioned Ops Contra Natrum. But, you know, reviewing every Behemoth album is a nicer, punchier title, so let's go with that. First up, we have Satanica, Storming Near the Baltic, released in April of 1995 via Pagan Records, and holy shit, what a mess. I'm just gonna say it right off the bat. This is a sloppy, messy, noisy fucking record. Look, I understand that it's probably pretty foolish to expect a full-blown masterpiece out of a young black metal band in the mid-90s on their debut fucking record. The reality is, they don't have the musical chops, they don't have the money to put into the production of the record, and even if they did, they'd probably be even more comfortable just like slathering a bunch of mayhem and enslaved and emperor worship onto a fucking record and calling it a fucking day. I understand that, and I accept that. My issue with this is not that it is like a very atypical kind of mid-90s black metal record. My issue is that it's just really bad and really clumsy and really poorly made on every level, even by the standards of black metal. Like, all the songs just bleed together into a whirlwind of distortion and noise and static. This album constantly sounds like a bag of razors being fed to a wood chipper. There are some instrumental passages that have some acoustic guitar and harpsichord work that do provide a little bit of a palate cleanser, a little bit of deviation from the norm, but both of these numbers come pretty early on in the record. And right after that, it's pretty much the same old song and dance for 45 fucking minutes. From an atmospheric standpoint, I think that there's a lot that this record does well. It's very raw, it's very intense, very cold, and very expressive. That's cool, but unfortunately, most of the music is just kind of lost within the chaos, and what isn't lost just isn't especially interesting. I'm sure your typical black metal nerd will find a lot to love and appreciate about a record like this, and good for them, honestly. But for me, I just found this to be a slightly excruciating experience. I would go with a 1.5 out of 5. I have no intention or desire to ever listen to this ever again. Honestly, right off the bat, I'm just going to say it. This is Behemoth's worst record. It's their sloppiest, their most poorly produced, their most incompetent, their most uninspired and unintuitive. I do not like this album. I will probably not listen to it ever again, so yeah. Moving on! Next up, we have Grom, released April 2nd, 1996 via Solus Titum Records, and what a massive fucking improvement. I mean, this was only released 8-9 months after Satanica, and it's significantly better in almost every fashion. The riffs are tighter and more dynamic, there's more variety in the music and in the vocals and in the production, there's more money being put into it. It's still very raw and foggy and cold, but everything is just transparent enough. It creates a really gloomy, spooky, sinister vibe. Everything is just heavier, sharper, more brutal, more every thing. It's better. Even when this album resorts to more like atypical black metal riffs and song structures, it still feels better because everything is just more energized. Everything is darker. Everything is more interesting. I mean, just look at the opening track, The Dark Forest. It has these ominous chanted vocals contrasted with, you know, your typical acidic black metal sneers and wails. It's got some really sharp, almost kind of blackened thrash speed metal riffery with some melodic hooks and like some weird little interluding passages that almost have like a Nawabum kind of neoclassical Viking metal flair to them. There's also Dragon's Lair, which is supremely fucking heavy. I mean, the percussion and rhythm guitar and lead guitar, it all just batters away like an absolute fucking madman. I like how keyboards and female vocals are integrated into the record. I like some of the more epic moments found on the latter half of the record, namely the title track. Overall, it's actually a genuinely good record. I think there are some issues still with the production. I think at some points it is still too raw and too noisy and too loud for its own good, but I mean, the music itself, it kind of fucking hits, man. I'm feeling an extremely enthusiastic 3.5 out of 5. If the production were a little fucking cleaner, like maybe just a little bit more transparent, a little bit more punchy, we'd be looking at a really solid 4 out of 5. But, you know, at the end of the day, we can't really argue with a very enthusiastic 3.5 out of 5, now can we? Especially considering I just trashed the previous fucking record. Next up, we have Pandemotic Incantations, released March 2nd, 1998, via Solus Titum, Novum Vox Mortis, Coach International, and Metal Mind Records. Holy shit, a lot of people had their hands in the Behemoth pot at this time. My lord. As much as I like Behemoth, I have to admit this is an album I wasn't really too familiar with when I began putting this video together. So I went into this mostly kind of blind and was kind of shocked by how genuinely hard-hitting and nasty this thing is. Like, it goes straight for the fucking jugular, shoves the knife as deep in as goddamn possible, and then fucks right off. It wastes no time, there is no fat, there is no filler. The album is chock full of bona fide fucking ragers and bangers. You have The Thousand Plagues I Witness, for instance, which is urgent and poignant and declarative. It has some horns and it has some strings and some more melodic guitar licks, but for the most part it just consistently and stubbornly bashes away at you. Right after that you have Satan's Sword, which just relishes in like a hellish kind of blackened death metal, thrash metal fury. Like, it's got wailing guitars and some really crushing riffs. The closing track, which I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce, has these really dramatic, slow-moving passages with some blackened grooves contrasted by these almost kind of spoken word vocal spats, and there are some horns and there are some strings, adding some symphonic and orchestral bombast to this. Similarly, with Spell of Inferno, pairs some very melodramatic synthesizers with some hellish, thrashy, death metal blackened leads. Kind of sounds like the gates of hell opening up before you. Yeah, I dig the crap out of this record. Honestly, 4 out of 5. I think it's great. I think it hits fucking hard, and I like it a lot. It's, kind of awesome. I would say in retrospect an underrated album because not a lot of people really talk about this thing, or at least I haven't noticed a lot of people talking about this thing. Next up we have Satanica, released August 9th, 1999 via Avant-Garde Metal Mind Music and Dwell. We're seeing Behemoth drift even further into death metal territory now, so much so that, you know, the bass pedal and the guitar tone, that almost feels reminiscent of some brutal death metal and some technical death metal of the time. I mean, there's still a bit of black metal darkness here, you know, we're not full-blown death metal just yet, but I do think it's safe to say that this is probably more closely related to something like Suffocation or Decapitated or even Despised Icon than it is to Mayhem or Dark Throne or something like that. Ceremony of Shiva, for instance, has these angular, neck-snapping rhythms and grooves that never let up. Then there's Decade of Therion, which throws some really dynamic, crushing guitar work at you, emboldened by some really technical percussion. And all the while you have a track like Lamb, which, still brutal, but it can also, flex some more creative muscles with some of the more symphonic bombast that we saw on moments of Pandemotic Incantations and even Grom. My issue with this record, though, is that I feel like it flexes all of its muscles a little bit too soon, and just looks kind of show-offy and unimpressive in its latter half. It's still heavy, and it's still performed with an insane amount of enthusiasm and aggression. The production is still stellar, but the songwriting just loses a little bit of its luster and impact. What starts off at a 4 out of 5 ultimately ends up feeling more like a 3 out of 5, leaning towards even a 2.5 out of 5 at the very, very end. So with that in mind, we're going to kind of go right in the middle with a 3.5 out of 5. Not a perfect record, it could definitely benefit from being more consistent and cohesive, but, I mean, even so, when it hits, it hits extremely fucking hard. Like, bring Tylenol. You may need it. Maybe, possibly. Next up, we have Thalema 6, released November 27th, 2000, via Mystic, Avant-Garde Music, Olympic and Century Media, Iron D, and Osmos Productions. Holy fucking shit. How many goddamn contracts did Nurgle and the Bunch sign back in the day? Oh my fucking lord. This record is interesting because I feel like Behemoth here have finally found that perfect marriage of black metal and death metal. It's brutal, it's dark, it's mysterious, the songs are dynamic, but they're still, really intense, and, they're not too, show-offy and weird. Even the production manages to find, a balance between, some really grainy black metal-esque guitar tones, but also the punchier kind of drum sound I would expect from records that Scott Burns worked on, from, Cannibal Corpse and Morbid Angel. Songwriting is great, too. I mean, you've got Inflamed with Rage, Antichrist Phenomenon, Inauguration of the Scorpio demo, Pansatyros, I believe it's called. I don't know. It's in, Greek lettering here, I think, maybe, or it might be Polish because the band is Polish. I don't know. The point is, a lot of great fucking songs here. Vinvam Sabati in particular has these really cool lurching grooves and these more spastic vocal displays that I'm really enjoying. It makes this feel really crazed and bloodthirsty and violent. Really great shit there. I would say the only material I'm not really digging is some of the bonus tracks that were added on subsequent re-releases. If you look up this album on Spotify right now, you'll notice a cover of David Bowie's Hello Space Boy, and you'll also notice that it's terrible. But I mean, if you turn it off right before then, it's not bad, and even if you don't, you'll still get a pretty cool cover of Sarcophago's Satanist, so it's not all bad. Feeling a 3.5 out of 5 on this particular bad boy, a very enthusiastic one at that. Strip away the David Bowie cover, maybe beef up the sound mix just a little bit, and you've got a good strong 4 out of 5. But, as we said before, no reason to complain with a very enthusiastic 3.5 out of 5. Next up, we have Zoskia Cultus, released October 28th, 2002, via Mystic, Avant-Garde Music, Olympic, Century Media Records, and Osmos Productions. Once again, worth noting this was also re-released at a certain point through Peaceville Records, as I'm now learning. Holy goddamn fucking shit. This record fucking rules. This record is fucking great. This is fucking awesome. This feels like a culmination of everything that, the last 3 Behemoth records have done. We've ironed out all the fucking kinks, we've, fine-tuned everything, we've polished everything, we've sharpened everything, we've sanded out all the rough, jagged edges, and what we have left is something that is just lean and mean, and it's a total fucking blackened death metal riff machine. It's declarative, it's evil, it's urgent, it's provocative, it's got tons of awesome fucking riffs and beats, channeling a lot of Slayer across this record, a lot of hellish wailing guitars and a lot of almost kind of thrashy breakdowns and tempo changes and such. I really like that. It adds to the intensity and the vibe of the record. You have some samples of religious sermons at the end of Horns of Baphomet. You even have a quote from Aleister Crowley. That same track, Horns of Baphomet, has tons of bloody, gruesome grooves. Just hearing this, I feel like I could summon Baphomet in my living room right fucking now. Tracks like Modern Iconoclast, Blackest of the Black, No Sympathy for Fools, and a few more just batter away, constantly delivering juicy, mouth-watering, delicious blackened death metal riffs and beats and breakdowns for days. There's also Here and Beyond, which has these more slow-paced, lurching, agonizing grooves. There's a little guitar ditty, a little moment that wouldn't be out of place on like South of Heaven or Seasons in the Abyss era Slayer, and then it unleashes pure blackened death metal chaos and carnage. Of all the albums we've talked about so far, I feel like this is Behemoth's tightest yet. So tight you could bounce fucking quarters off this goddamn thing. What more can I say, man? It's a great fucking record, strong 4 out of 5. Go listen to it if you somehow have not already. Next up, we have Demigod, released October 2004 via Mystic, Regain, Century Media, and Victor Entertainment. Honestly, you can copy and paste a lot of what I've said about the last couple albums and just apply it here. Musically, this is 110 million% a continuation of Zoskia Cultus, with some of the heavier sounds and the beefier tones of Satanica. Could you make the argument that at this point Behemoth is a little repetitive? Sure, that's not unfair to say, but like, the thing that they're repeating is still really fucking fun to listen to. And it's still performed with the utmost enthusiasm and energy and, like, violence and hunger. And as such, there's still a lot of great fucking songs. The title track, Demigod, Nephilim Rising, Conquer All, which probably has one of Behemoth's best lead guitar riffs ever. Like, the day that riff fails to inspire a mosh pit of absolutely insane proportions is a day I do not want to see. It's kind of cool to see Norgal just totally embracing these really manic death metal roars and gutturals. Like, he sounds like he's ready to go off and join a brutal death metal band or some shit. And that, I won't lie, does help a little bit to differentiate this from, you know, Zoskia Cultus. You know, it does give it a little bit of its own edge and vibe in that regard. But yeah, even so, I don't have a ton to say, because I feel like I've already said it about Zoskia Cultus, and I guess to a certain extent, Satanica. It's a great record, it hits hard, it doesn't fuck around, it's great, check it out. Did I mention it's great, and you should check it out? If I didn't, then you should, because it is. So, yeah. There you go. Next up, we have the apostasy. I don't know how to pronounce this album's name. I do know that it was released July 17th, 2007 through Regain, Century Media, Mystic, and Victor Entertainment. And I do know it's a really good fucking record. While this is not, to my knowledge, a full-blown concept album, it does at times have the feel and the flow of a full-blown concept album. The songs have a continuous flow to them and often talk a lot about religious apostasy, spaghetti, asbestos, whatever. It's that word. That's the word that I can't say. It talks a lot about that. And of course, putting that aside, the album is just really, really, really heavy and really punishing and really brutal with a lot of great fucking songs. Prometherian at the Left Hand of God, Slaying the Prophets of Isa. I mean, it's epic, it's bold, it's bombastic, crazy heavy, crazy dark. It's Behemoth doing what Behemoth do with a little bit more of, you know, an ambitious cinematic edge and layer. If you wanted, like, a bigger, more dramatic version of Demigod or Zoskia Cultus, this is it. Plain and fucking simple. Hi! Hello! How are ya? You looking sharp. Is that a new haircut? Anyways, we've lost big chunks of footage while editing this video. I don't know how or why, doesn't matter. All I know is I gotta fill in the fucking blanks. Which is why I'm gonna tell you right now that the apostasy, which is why I'm just gonna tell you now the apostasy, the title that I still can't pronounce. I don't know how this fucking word is pronounced. It's a weird tongue twister that's driving my autistic mind crazy. It's a 4 out of 5. Very strong 4 out of 5. It's brutal, it's gnarly, it's dark, it's got tons of great songs. I don't have anything to really add to it. I just think it's a great record. Side note, Behemoth at this point in their discography kind of feel like Napalm Death, in the 2000s. You know, every album is great for the exact same reasons. They're all just great. What more do you need to know? They're fucking fun, they're fucking good, they're fucking great. Ta-da! So yeah. Anyways, moving on. Alright, so it turns out we lost even more footage. Yippee! Wonderful. I guess that means I'm re-recording this entire section. Great. Next up, we have Evangelion, released August 7th, 2009, via Metal Blade, Nuclear Blast, Mystic Productions, Victor, and Demon Stealer. Honestly, just copy-paste everything I said about the last couple albums, except now it's better. Production-wise, this has a more organic feel. Musically, Behemoth leans the furthest into death metal with this record. Some of the most punishing and brutal arrangements and riffs to date. But, I mean, everything else, literally copy and paste. As I said before, Behemoth at this point in their discography is just like Napalm Death in the 2000s. Every album is great, and every album is great for the exact same reasons as every other fucking album. Everything from Daimonos to A Fire in the Void to Lucifer, The Seed of I, it's all brilliant. Some of the best riffs, some of the best beats, some of the best choruses. It's angry, in your face, hellish. Is it fair to say that Behemoth is still pretty repetitive at this point in their discography? Overall, yeah, that's still a fair argument to make. But also, who the fuck cares when the music is this great? I don't. Honestly, I don't. Just like how I didn't care when every Napalm Death album in the 2000s sounded identical to each other. I didn't care because they were all fucking awesome. This for me is a 4.5 out of 5. It's an incredible record. It's one of the best from Behemoth. Check it out if you have not already. Alright, I think after this we should have the regular video resuming. No more of this, so booyah. Thank you for being patient. Enjoy the rest of the video. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived at the big boy in Behemoth's discography, the album that undeniably made them a global phenomenon and quite possibly the biggest extreme metal band of the 2010s. We have The Satanist, released February 3rd, 2014, via Nuclear Blast, Metal Blade Records, Mystic, JVC Kenwood, Victor, and EVP. The Satanist takes everything that records like Demigod and Thalema No. 6, Zoskia Cultist, blah blah blah, so on and so forth, did so well, and raises it to new emotional and spiritual heights. With some of their most dynamic songwriting, some of their most ambitious and cinematic production and arrangements, some of their most passionate performances to date. Quite frankly, years later, Blow Your Trumpets, Gabriel still puts a chill down my fucking spine. I love those apocalyptic trumpets. I love those really slow, lurching, menacing grooves. There's also In the Absence of Life, which has this really oppressive blackened death metal sledgehammer riffery, contrasted with like some spoken word sections and some acoustic guitar and this very, very soft saxophone playing. It's almost sensual. It's so smooth and surprisingly chill in these moments. Then there's the album's monumentally cathartic and climactic closing number, O Father, O Satan, O Son. The way Nurgle rambles and raves at the end of this, like, it really is kind of powerful. In general, his performance across the record is absolutely remarkable. A legendary performance. His lyrics, his vocals, his guitar playing, everything. He is a man on a mission here, and the mission is to meet God and spit in his fucking face. It's worth remembering, too, that everything that Nurgle displays emotionally on this record and spiritually is coming from a really real and also a really dark place. In the time gap between Evangelion and the Satanists, Nurgle was dealing with cancer and leukemia, dreadful diseases and illnesses I would not wish upon my worst enemy. There were a bunch of procedures he had to go through. He had to have a fucking bone marrow transplant. Do you have any idea how fucking painful that is? I don't. I don't ever want to know. That's how painful it is. You don't want to know either. And all of this has shaped the Satanists in a way, and all of this has shaped the Satanists so much so that I don't think this record could have been made, at least not in this exact fashion, had Nurgle not gone through all of this. The Satanist is often regarded as one of the greatest black or death metal records of the 2010s, perhaps one of the best rock or metal albums of the 2010s. It was named Album of the Year by multiple outlets in 2014, And, yeah, they're all 100% right. It is all of those fucking things. I think it's a perfect record. I think it's a masterpiece, if we're being frank. 5 out of 5. I fucking love it. I jam Messe Noir and Ora Pro Nobis Lucifer and the title track and Blow Your Trumpets Gabriel and all that shit on a regular basis. I love this album. This is like everything I want from Behemoth. Everything I want from blackened death metal. I love this fucking record. I don't care if some people think it's overrated or overhyped. I don't give a shit. You don't have to listen to it. I think it's incredible. I will defend it till the day I fucking die. Because it's that fucking great. Behemoth's best album, period. It fucking rules. Check it out if you haven't already, but I mean, you probably have. Because, like, people still talk about it that fucking much. It's that fucking important. So, yeah. And now this brings us to I Loved You at Your Darkest, released October 5th, 2018, via Nuclear Blast, Metal Blade, Mystic, JVC Kenward Victor, and EVP once again. While not as monumental as The Satanist, I still think this is a really, really good fucking record. It's still very unique in its tone, and in its vibe, and in its atmosphere, and it shows Behemoth kind of building on some of the elements of The Satanist, but also bringing in a lot of new influences and ideas from across the rock and metal spectrums. Bartzabel, for instance, is a slow-paced kind of doom metal, goth metal laced blackened power ballad, if you will, with chanted vocals and aggressive riffs. I personally really love it. I actually think it's one of my favorite Behemoth songs. Then there's God Equals Dog, which, you know, some people criticize as being really edgy and cringy because of its lyrics and also because of the children's choir. But I don't know, I think it sounds kinda cool. It's hellish and big and bold and extremely cinematic. It has the kind of bombast and energy I expect from like a symphonic black metal band like Dimmu Borgir or Cradle of Filth. If Crucifixion was not enough, sports some kind of like post-punk death rock influence, which I think is pretty cool. And all the while, you still have some more straightforward blackened death metal ragers like We Are the Next 1000 Years and Wolves of Siberia. While not as intense as some of the material we might have heard on Demigod or you know, the Apostasy or whatever, I think, you know, it channels a lot of those same energies and just kind of executes it in a different way. It's fair to say that it's not as memorable overall as The Satanist, not as impactful or as passionate, but it's still pretty good, I think. I still enjoy a good chunk of the material on this album, and honestly, when it came out, I fucking loved it. It was one of my favorite albums of 2018. I think at the time, in those early days of the Metal Meltdown, I gave it like a 4.5 out of 5. I probably wouldn't do that now. It would probably get closer to like a 3.5 out of 5 now. In fact, that's what I'm gonna give it. But I still really like it. I still think it's really good. I think it's safe to say if you don't like The Satanist, you probably wouldn't like this record. That's fair. And I also think it's safe to say that if you just want that really brutal classic Behemoth sound, you're gonna fucking hate this record. But I don't know, I think it's well made, I think it's well produced, I like how flexible and diverse it is. Shoot me. I like it. I liked it then and I still like it now. Fucking, I don't care. Shoot me. Whatever. I don't fucking care. Whatever. And since we're not going to talk about Ops Contra Natram in this video, as I said before, that brings an end to reviewing every Behemoth album. Thank you for joining us here today. What's your favorite Behemoth record? What's your least favorite Behemoth record? How would you rank the albums in their discography? How would you score each album individually? Let me know in the comments below. Press this button to subscribe to the Metal Meltdown so you can get updates immediately in case you somehow aren't already. Boom, Behemoth album review. Boom, something else. Wow, look at that. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.